Have you ever noticed how two completely different stories in the news can, when you look a little closer, get woven together to tell one much bigger story? Well, that's exactly what we're breaking down today. We're looking at a really shocking crime in North Carolina, and on the flip side, a controversial tax proposal. Let's see if we can connect the dots.
So here's the plan. First, we'll dig into a brutal murder case and a really surprising legal turn it just took. Then we're going to switch gears completely and talk about this proposed exit tax for wealthy people. We'll get into the strong arguments being made against it, and then, at the end, we'll see exactly how these two totally separate stories get linked together under one powerful idea: systemic dysfunction. All right, so let's set the scene for our first story. It all starts with a truly horrific crime that happened on a light rail train in Charlotte. The victim was a young woman named Iryna Zarutska, a refugee from Ukraine, and the man accused of her murder is DeCarlos Brown. But as you're about to see, this story gets a lot more complex when you start looking into the accused's past.
And to really get why this is so controversial, there's just one number you need to know: 14. That's how many times DeCarlos Brown had reportedly been arrested and charged with various crimes before this ever happened. And that history, well, it's the backdrop for this latest and very surprising legal twist.
Yeah, it's that history that really sets the stage for a pivotal turn the case has just taken. And it all centers on a specific legal idea. So get this. A recent finding has declared that the accused is mentally incompetent to proceed on the state murder charges. I mean, right away, that raises a ton of questions, right? Especially for someone who has apparently been fit enough to stand trial for other crimes in the past. So, what does competent to stand trial actually mean? Well, basically, it's not about whether you're guilty or if you were insane at the time of the crime. It's about your mental state right now. Can you understand what's happening in court? And can you help your own lawyer defend you? If the answer is no, then you're not competent to stand trial. And this leads to the big question, the one observers in our source material are asking. This guy was apparently competent enough for his previous charges, so what exactly has changed now?
Now, it's really important to understand the details here. This finding came from a single psychiatric evaluation, and, this is crucial, it only applies to the state case. He's not being released. He's actually still in federal custody on separate federal charges, and that case is still set to go forward.
Okay, just park that thought about the justice system for a minute. We are about to do a hard pivot into what feels like a completely different universe. We're talking finance and public policy now. But trust me, you're going to see how they're connected in a pretty surprising way. We're talking about something called an exit tax. The idea is pretty simple. If you're wealthy and you decide to pack up and move out of a state, that state would hit you with a big tax bill on your way out the door. And according to the source material, this isn't just some hypothetical idea. It's reportedly being considered in several places, specifically California, New York, D.C., and Michigan. And as the source points out, these are all places that have seen a lot of high-income people moving away recently. So why is this even being proposed? And what's the big pushback? Well, let's dig into the really powerful analogy the source commentators are using to frame this whole debate. The way the source material frames this is really as a stark contrast. You've got these states with higher taxes that are losing people, and they're the ones proposing these exit taxes. Then you've got states with lower taxes that are seeing a flood of new residents. The argument here is that people are literally fleeing certain policies for what they see as more welcoming places. And this brings us to the core criticism, and wow, it is a blunt one. This is a direct quote that basically says, this is the East German approach. The argument is, instead of fixing your state to make people want to stay, you're just trying to make it too expensive for them to get out. And just to really drive that point home, they go even further, explicitly comparing these financial penalties to the Berlin Wall. You know, a literal wall built to keep people from leaving. It's a really provocative way to frame this whole issue. So we have a murder suspect who's been deemed incompetent to stand trial, and a proposal to tax wealthy people for moving. How in the world do these two things connect? Well, let's look at the single word the source uses to tie it all together. And that word is dysfunction. The commentary around the murder case isn't just about one legal ruling. It's presented as a glaring example of a dysfunctional criminal justice system that, they argue, keeps letting offenders back out onto the street. And there it is. that's the linchpin of the whole argument. The source claims that both of these stories are symptoms of broken systems. The justice system is failing to keep people safe, and this tax policy is what a failing government does when it tries to trap its tax base instead of actually fixing the underlying problems.
So, to quickly recap the argument presented here, we've got two very different stories that are being held up as two sides of the same coin. On one side, a legal ruling that's framed as a failure of criminal justice, and on the other, a tax policy that's framed as a failure of state management, leading to what critics are calling financial walls.
And all of this leaves us with a final thought to chew on. It's a powerful reminder of how a narrative can be built to connect what seem like totally random events into a single cohesive argument. And it makes you wonder, right? How do the stories we hear every day connect the world around us? And how do those connections end up shaping what we believe?